Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Lindsay Hume. I'm a trained therapist turned certified empowerment coach for women who are ready to let go of the past and design an extraordinary future where they create exactly what they want in the areas of life, love, and money. I teach mindset tools and strategies to help women become their future self, overcome things like self-doubt and fear, and make reaching their goals inevitable. So today I'm going to be talking about reframing the past in a way that makes reaching your goals easier. And before we start, I just want to make a really quick but important disclaimer. This masterclass is not for you if you have unhealed trauma. If you have unhealed trauma, I highly recommend seeing a therapist or another trained professional of your choosing to work through that and heal it completely before applying what I'm going to teach today. And the reason is what I teach is almost 100% mindset, and unhealed trauma doesn't just live in our mind, right? It lives in our nervous system, it lives in our body. And so just changing your perspective on how you think is not, in my professional opinion, going to heal your trauma. So please, as I'm going through this, keep in mind that I'm not suggesting you use this method to heal or cope with trauma. Okay, so let's talk about the past. How we interpret our past influences how we see our future. And this is something that I learned from Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's a psychologist. And if you haven't looked him up, checked him out, please do. His information on future self, past self, personality is transformative. Many people believe that past events, especially the negative ones, have an impact on how they feel in the present, right? Or the results they have in the present. And so, for example, you may have failed in the past, right? Whatever that's been in a career, in a relationship, a goal you had. And instead of seeing that failure as a learning, right? We use it to explain all the reasons why we aren't or can't be successful or happy or whatever it is we want right now. But what if the past actually has no bearing on our present and our future, right? What if we actually have more control over what our past means and how it impacts us? The Oxford Languages Dictionary defines the past as gone by in time and no longer existing. And when I thought of it this way, as the past no longer existing, then it means that the events of the past cannot possibly make you feel anything now because they're no longer happening, right? And what I want to offer is that what is actually impacting how you feel in the present and how you behave in the present are your present thoughts about the past, okay? So if you think negatively about your past or make the events of the past mean something negative about you or what is possible in your life, you will make achieving your goals much harder. The reason this is true is because how you think directly impacts how you feel. Remember, your thoughts create your feelings. And so if you have negative thoughts about your past and how it's impacted you, you will likely create feelings of hopelessness, sadness, anger, resentment, so on. And when you feel things like this, your actions will reflect that feeling. And I don't know about you, but I've never taken powerful action from the feeling of hopelessness, right? I have crawled onto the couch, drowned my sorrows in Chinese food, red wine, and Netflix, but not much more. So one of the key things we need to do to move towards our future or towards our future self and our goal is to reframe our past, right? This is the only way you'll ever hear me talk about the past. It's not relevant to understanding where you want to go in the future, okay? And you do not have to take everything with you, right? You get to decide who you want to be, what you want to achieve, and whoever you were in the past does not matter. And in fact, research now shows that we are not static, right? As humans, our personality is not fixed. We are changing a lot throughout our lives. We are motivated very much so by our future vision. And this is why it's so important to have a detailed future vision, right? When you know what it is you want and you know where you're going, right? You are committed to that. And when we're committed, we take actions that support that future self or that future goal, right? So one of the ways you can kind of prove this to yourself is to sit down and write out who you were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, right? Look at what your daily habits were. What did you do for work? How much money did you make? Who were the people you spent the most time with, right? What were your goals? Like, what were your top 3 goals 5 years ago or 3 years ago? You'll likely find that there is a lot of difference between the person who you were 3 or 5 years ago and who you are now, right? So instead of focusing on who you have been, right, and seeing that as static or unchangeable, and instead of seeing that past events, we're usually talking about negative ones, right, have made things difficult or impossible for you, reframe your past in a way that supports your future self rather than creating obstacles, right? My favorite question to ask here is, how did the events of the past happen for me, right, rather than to me? And this is another question I got from Dr. Benjamin Hardy. This gets us out of our mind, or this gets us out of thinking, right? In terms of the past being restrictive. So I'm not being very clear here. When we ask ourselves the question, right, how can I reframe past events, especially negative ones, as something that happened for me rather than to me? This gets us thinking in terms of learning and growth, right? So what did we gain from our past experiences? How did they set us up for the future we now want to create? So for example, I always like to think of my first 2 relationships, which were both dumpster fires, by the way, as happening for me, right? I am so grateful for them. Going through those relationships made me stronger. They gave me greater clarity into who I am, who I want to be, what I want. I know myself better because of them. And they set the standard for what I was going to and do now accept or not in my life, right? I also sometimes have guilt, I think is the right word, around getting my master's in counseling psychology, doing my internship, right? Working in that world as a therapist for about a year, and then deciding not to follow through, right? Deciding not to continue therapy. But then I remind myself of how that experience led me to coaching, right? Which was actually the thing that I really wanted to do. And that my master's was one of the reasons I was able to immigrate to the US with my husband so easily. Okay, so reframing my past in these ways makes my experiences, right, that at the time felt very negative, feel productive and valuable. So I'm not just going through life with a victim mindset, right? I'm learning and growing and using negative experiences to propel me into a new future. Now, when you do this, be careful not to just pick the most positive thought you can come up with, right? So the importance here when reframing the past isn't necessarily positivity, right? It's not trying to make things all roses and unicorns. You want to focus on having thoughts that are useful, right? They motivate you. They're believable to you. Because if you don't believe in the thought you're having, like if I didn't really believe that having those 2 relationships helped me to learn more about who I was, it wouldn't be helpful. Because when you don't believe something, you won't create a feeling. You'll feel nothing. It'll be like, oh, I said it, I thought it, and I feel nothing. And that doesn't motivate any action. And so that won't support you in moving forward to the future. think of something that feels really true for you, sorry. Something that you're grateful for, right? Look to the past and think of a way that you can be grateful for what happened, right? You can lean on it and leverage it in pursuit of whatever goal it is you have. Another good way, or I guess productive way you can look at it, is how did that event make you more of who you are, right? Because I think with every failure, we get more and more clarity, right, about who we are and what we want. So don't be afraid of the past or try to run from it. Own it. Tell the hero side of the story, right? The one where you came out on top. And when you do this, you might be inspired, right? You might actually feel inspired by your own life, by what you learned, and you might inspire someone else. Okay. You'll start to focus on all that you've gained, right, through your experiences, how all the grit and the sadness and the hard things that have happened have been for you, preparing you for where you're going now, right? You know you have overcome your past when you can be grateful for it. That's something that Benjamin Hardy said that has really resonated with me. I'll say it again. You know you have overcome your past when you can be grateful for it. And when we think about this concept, and as Benjamin Hardy talks about it more, he talks about how when you feel grateful for your past, you have hope for your future, right? You start to see everything is happening for you and you become more willing and able to experience negative feelings and failures. So that is what I have for you today. Again, if you are dealing with some sort of deep, like emotional trauma or physical trauma, please, this concept will not help you heal, right? I'm not suggesting if you've had deep trauma that just changing how you think about that traumatic experience will help. Please seek professional help in healing the trauma that likely lives in the nervous system and in your body. Okay, that's what I have for you today. I want to ask you at the end of this class, if you know anybody, if you know another woman, if you have a friend or a family member that you think could benefit, please share the Zoom link with her. I use the same Zoom link every class, and I will also be sending it out in a replay today. And if you want to continue diving deeper into this work and you're looking for a coach or mentor to support you, use the link in my bio on my Instagram account to schedule a free consult call, and let's get you moving towards your future. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a great week and I will see you next Thursday.